Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another interview podcast with people from the Cardano ecosystem. Today I'm sitting down with Jack from Intersect. We sat down probably last year at this point, you might have even been in a different role within Intersect. There's been a lot of changes since. So what I'm interested in today is to find out what the latest is with Intersect, with the Treasury withdrawals that are going in, and hopefully we can put that information out to everyone so everyone's up to date on what's happening. But Jack, thanks once again for taking the time. I know it's an extremely busy time getting the withdrawals in as we speak, really going in today. But can you give the intro to yourself and then high level of Intersect, and we'll get into some of the withdrawals and what's happening then.
Yeah, thanks, Paul, and thanks for having me on. So, yeah, I'm Jack Briggs. I'm now the interim executive director here at Intersect. I previously was the director of the ecosystem at Intersect, and then previous to that, various other roles in Cardano. But yeah, I'm now the interim ED here. I have been since I think the end of April, give or take, when there were some changes. And yeah, we're right in the middle of things. So I guess I'll start with a little bit of context on what Intersect is. So we're a member-based organization for the Cardano ecosystem. We have, I think it will take 2,000 members now, if I'm not remembering rightly. And essentially members come together to recommend and provide, help the Cardano community overall be informed on the decisions that they could take related to the network across a bunch of different parameters, like from the actual on-chain parameters, but also how do we even look a bit further ahead, like with product vision, and like a 2030 roadmap and some of the sort of bigger thinking around the strategy behind the network and everything there. So it's a really great place to be in terms of being able to influence and contribute and actually get some of the things that bug you, right? There's a lot of the builders and developers on Cardano that can come to Intersect to say, look, I've got a problem here, and do you have the same problem? Most of the time, problems are shared and or felt, in different places. And so we can come together and try and solve those and make recommendations to the community in the form of governance actions or in the form of a strategy that can help inform a roadmap and future development of the network overall. So yeah, that's Intersect a bit in a nutshell. There are lots of different domains within Intersect, or like verticals, such as our role as an administrator for the budget, which is, you touched on that earlier. So yeah, we are in the middle of that now. And we're about to submit the remaining 38 withdrawals. So some of those that have been following governance actions as they land, as they hit on chain, there's a good Xbot actually that like flashes up governance actions a minute after they've been submitted. We did do the first one, the lowest value one, as a bit of a final sense check.
Before we get into them, just take a step back to give people clarity of where we are in the process. So I know I mentioned Treasury withdrawals are what you're doing now. You've went through, there's a lot of different things that Intersect are a part of and kind of helping drive forward the Treasury withdrawals and being the custodian of that and taking out the funds and then administrating, or the administrator is the right word. That's part of it. We might come back in another podcast to dive into some of the other areas, and especially for people looking in from the outside. But this is probably the area that a lot of people are interested in right now. But just to give people the high level overview. So there was voting previous to this. There was anyone was able to put in the proposal that wanted to have you guys as the administrators for the Treasury withdrawals. And then that was kind of brought down to 39 hit. I can't remember the exact levels of the percent. Was it a 50% or was it 60?
Yeah, 50+% was the threshold in the off-chain polling. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So then that was the ones that you were going to move forward with then. And then there was a lot of talk of, do you put in one Treasury withdrawal for all 39 proposals, or do you put in individual ones? And everyone had different opinions, but that's kind of just to give people a bit of context who might be aware of that's what's happened before this. So now there are 39 proposals that are going to move forward, and you have landed on doing it with 39 individual proposals, even though it definitely puts a lot more workload on Intersect. But I think you're doing it because that was sentiment from the community.
Yeah, and yeah, it's a good, sorry, but it's good to go back actually a little bit on this, just as a step process here. We kicked off a budget process at the end of last year, and there was a few changes there. Obviously, it's the first time we're doing this as an ecosystem. So, we're going to be changing things as we're like seeing things change, emerge, the problems, right? So what we ended up having was this off-chain process where anybody, like you said, could submit an idea, a proposal with essentially their vendor who's going to be delivering that work themselves. They would present their idea. We had 194 of them come through on GovTool. And then we had an off-chain vote in the Ecclesia platform, which then whittled that 194 down to 40, actually. One of those out of the 40 didn't list Intersect as their administrator. So 39 of those proposals were then clumped together and put as a budget info action in a single budget info action. And that passed in mid-June with, I think, 65% approval rating from DReps, and also the ICC approved that too. So that's the first constitutional step is getting a budget info action approved, which we have done now. And the second constitutional step is the Treasury Withdrawal governance actions. And that's where we are right today. And as you mentioned, yeah, we had ideas around, we could just do one big Treasury withdrawal, essentially directly correlating to the budget info action, now specifying where to send the money from the Treasury. So the budget info action didn't do anything moving money-wise. It just made sure that was the budget, that was the allocation of money for these particular initiatives that the Cardano community wanted to fund. To actually move money from the Treasury on chain, there has to be a different type of governance action, and that's where we are today. And yeah, like you said, should we do one? Should we do 5? Should we split it in 2? So we do 2025 spending and 2026 spending. Should we do all 39? It was pretty contentious, lots of different viewpoints, really all valid viewpoints, actually. But yeah, we ended up with having the community will with 39 individual ones. So there's extra granularity of choice at this stage today. So we're about to submit 39. Well, we've submitted one actually, as I mentioned before, the day before yesterday, and we are now submitting the remaining 38, which will then be running for 4 weeks, give or take. 6 epochs is exactly the expiry window for governance actions in general. So that takes us, I think, to like mid-August, 30 days, give or take. Now, unlike the budget interaction, the withdrawals could be ratified much sooner. So if the thresholds are met for a Treasury withdrawal, they are read on chain, those thresholds. And if they hit 67% with the Constitutional Committee also voting yes, that'll be counted at an epoch boundary, and then it'll be enacted the following epoch boundary. So essentially, inaction means money is triggered out of the Treasury, it's sent at the epoch boundary from the Treasury to the destination address that we put in the governance action itself. That all happens on chain, automated. There's no humans that touch the Treasury at all, because we've got the on-chain governance to do that for us.
Okay, so that's all automated based on the on-chain voting that triggers the withdrawal, and then that's sent. Them funds aren't sent directly to the project at that point, though. They're sent to Intersect, and there's a full process after that, is there?
Yeah, well, sort of. Yeah, so the address that we're specifying the withdrawals is going to our new smart contract framework that we've developed with Sunday Labs. And there's lots of documentation on this, which we can dive deep into that. It might take an hour to do on the smart contract stuff. But essentially, it goes into a smart contract framework where there are multi-signatories in this framework that allow for the funding of projects to happen in this sort of escrow, smart contract environment, which is great because it's transparent. It keeps everything auditable on chain. And so just to take an example, if we had everything approved, the 39 proposals all went through, we'd have 275 million ADA in this Treasury reserve contract, we're calling it. Essentially, it's like the master smart contract. And from there, we'll then create partitions, what we're calling vendor contracts, funding those individual initiatives in different vendor contracts for their specific amounts that DReps approved previously. And then within those contracts, there'll be milestones. So it might be 10 milestones, it might be 5, depending on the project. And those milestones will define the payment schedule for that work. So it could be that there's a milestone 0 payment. Some projects need money immediately to get started. Some projects are waiting more towards the end to get their full reimbursement for the work. But the point is that every milestone, you deliver milestone reporting back to Intersect. We'll check those milestone reports to make sure they're accurate and full and complete. We'll then be adding that to the smart contract framework, so it's fully transparent. The community can review those milestone reports as well. The payment schedule is detailed in the smart contract. So there's automation there as well, which is great. There's nothing, bottlenecks are reduced significantly because payment will happen automatically. Now, the safeguard to that is there's a pause function. So if work has stalled, if there's a valid reason why a vendor goes, oh, I need a couple of months, actually, I'm not going to be able to work on this milestone for 2 or 3 months, we can initiate a pause on that their next payment. And also that's great for arbitration. And let's say there's a problem that they can't deliver it or whatever reason, we can, as I said, put a pause payment in, we can modify that contract. Ultimately, any unspent funds can get swept back directly to the Treasury through the smart contract framework. So it's a nice loop. And it keeps everything auditable on chain. And really importantly, actually, just sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but really importantly, as part of the smart contract framework, we have Intersect administrating it, but we also have an external oversight committee, and they provide the checks and balances on Intersect so that I, myself, or Intersect can't act unilaterally on anything apart from pause payments, because we have a relationship with the vendor, and that's important that we're able to pause. But ultimately, the external oversight committee will be checking for errors. They'll be checking that we funded the contract to exactly what DReps approved, and so essentially to prevent errors on the whole, but also to stop unilateral control for one entity on it. So it's really robust. And actually, the 5 oversight committee members are great organizations in the Cardano ecosystem. We've got Sunday Labs, Zerberus, NMaker, D Quadrant, and the Cardano Foundation all serving on that committee.
Great. As I was thinking of questions in my head, you got to them answers too. But on the oversight committee, are they the ones that sign the payoffs? So is there a multi-sig that signs the payouts, or how does that actually work? So when Intersect review the work that has been done and you agree, yes, it hits the milestone, I presume something has to be put on chain so that it can be picked up by the contract to actually release the payment, or how does that payment get initiated?
So the payments are initiated when we actually fund the contract initially. So so back to that analogy of 275 million, we've got that in the master contract. And now we're going to fund project A for 10 million, and that's what DReps approved, that 10 million. In that 10 million, we already know, because we've got a statement of work and an MSA contract legally with Intersect that we've signed, like a traditional contract for arbitration purposes. We've signed that with the vendor, and the milestones are in the statement of work. So we just transpose those into the smart contract with a schedule. So that's done right at the beginning, and those payments will happen automatically based on the schedule that we put in. Now, to approve that schedule, exactly, it's time-based, exactly that. And to approve that schedule, to approve the 10 million going into this contract, Intersect will initiate it. So we'll say, vendor A needs 10 million. That was what was approved. These are the 5 milestones. And then the external oversight committee, 2 out of 5. So it's a set of permissions. It's multi-sig, but it's a set of permissions that will double check that, yes, 10 million was what DReps approved. Okay, yes, this is the correct vendor, and their wallet address is correct and verified by the vendor as well. So there's a few checks and balances the external committee are providing on top of what we do. And then that is funded, and it's happening. And then it's throughout the life cycle of that contract where maybe milestone 3, like I mentioned, is delayed for very good reasons. That happens all the time. We may then go in and modify that contract, let's say in 6 months, to say that milestone needs an extra 3 months before we should trigger payment. And that would be an ongoing negotiation with the vendor and communication and collaboration with them. And of course, the community. And the community can see all of this, which is really important. We've built a dashboard, or Sunday Labs and Zerberus have been building dashboards for this, so the community can see if we've modified a contract, why, the changes to milestones, and all the reporting that has been provided by the vendor via us. That will all be visible on through the smart contract and on chain, so through the dashboards.
Okay, that's good. It's good to hear, and so that's why there is the pause function just when it is automated. And with the funds that are paid out, can they be staked initially, or like say it gets put into all the addresses of the projects, obviously in the smart contract? Is that staked, or does it just sit there waiting to be withdrawn? It's only when the projects actually have custody of it, then they can do what they want with it at that point?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the smart contract itself cannot be staked, and it is delegated to an auto-abstain, the auto-abstain DRep. So it doesn't involve itself in governance in that way, but it does as an auto-abstain. But you know what I mean. but it's not staked in SBO, and that's important. There's a constitutional requirement there that is the case. After, when it's so when a vendor comes in and says, okay, I've achieved milestone 1, great. Now maybe that's 10% of their whatever it is. They'll come in and claim that, so they're able to log in, connect their wallet, and claim that payment. And then from there, like you said, they can then do what they need to do with it to pay staff, to buy a tool, whatever they need to do. It's in their control.
Okay, I think that's fair. Obviously, that's a big chunk of ADA, the whole amount of it. So it could potentially influence voting, whether Catalyst or whether it's other on-chain votes or whatever happens later on. And the same on staking. You would have the thing of who actually earns the staking rewards, or could Intersect get them, or could the projects get them. So it's cleaner that it doesn't happen like that. And just for me, for following this, generally you might have other sites. I know you mentioned dashboards and stuff. I can put the links to them down below this video for anyone following. I generally I like Etastat, the way that they have the proposals. There's lots of other sites out there too. I just find this is one of the first ones that I started going to, and I keep going back. This was the first proposal that went in, was it? The M Labs one?
Yes. This is the one we put out a couple of days ago as our final test, mainnet test, before we did the other 38. And we spotted a small little detail problem with it, which is why we haven't done the other 38 immediately after this one. The idea was, Paul, I was up really early in the morning with my team doing this, and we hit the go button on this. We went to check it with the intention to do 38 like that next 5 minutes. But we spotted a little problem on GovTool, which we've now corrected. So that's where we are today. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And is there any other?
Yeah. Go on.
Sorry. Is there any other sites that you would recommend people taking a look at, or sites to follow along?
So there are a ton of great sites actually. So you can look at Tempo Vote. Tempo's got some great UI and tooling there. So that's tempo.vote. Then you also have GovTools, which is gov.tools, as sort of maybe the primary place, if you like, where you can vote on these proposals and steal the metadata. All of the explorers pick up the metadata as well. And you can also pick up the metadata and the actions within your wallet as well. Eternal have this functionality. So there's lots of different ways you can see what's happening with with governance at any moment. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'd say Etastat is just one that and you can't vote or anything from here. This is just one of the block explorers. We're lucky on Cardano. There's some really good block explorers with C Explorer, Cardano Scan, Etastat, and probably even more that I'm just not thinking of off the top of my head. But so the other proposals are going to go in today as we record. I'm not sure if this podcast mightn't get out today, but so the proposals might be on chain by the time people see this. So make sure you check. I'll put them different links down below, as well as the dashboards. But then you mentioned there is, I think, 6 epochs for the votes to happen. What happens to the proposals that don't meet the threshold? Because from what I remember, the off-chain votes was just over 50%, but is there 63% or 67 or something now it has to hit for a withdrawal?
Yeah, exactly that. There's a higher threshold now to get this money out of the Treasury, and there's good reasons for that in terms of safeguards around the receiving address, making sure that we really want to fund this from Treasury, right? So yeah, you need 67% DRep support or live active stake from DReps to be able to see your action passed, as well as the Constitutional Committee saying yes. We're submitting that on behalf of the vendor, so that's where the 38 or the 39 are coming from. Like Intersect is submitting it on behalf of the vendor, taking what DReps approved as part of the budget info action. So it directly correlates to the budget info action, which is also an important constitutional point. Those will live for 6 epochs on chain. All governance actions have a 6 epoch expiry. But unlike info actions, where they they run their full course, and then at the end if it's been above 50% or whatever thresholds you've set for your info action. Info actions are general multi-purpose voting, polling tooling with functionality that we have on chain, but there's no sort of effect on chain apart from it just being a record on chain. Whereas the withdrawals themselves do have an effect on chain. As I said, they actually do take the money out of the Treasury and put them into the smart contract in this case. But because they do take effect on chain, they can be ratified earlier. So, for example, the Amaru proposal, which was the first Treasury withdrawal that we've seen successfully pass on Cardano, so congratulations, Amaru team. They had some really fantastic support. Yeah, we can bring it up actually, Paul. Yeah. Now that I think, you can correct. Someone will correct me when they watch this, but I think that was the fastest approved governance action to date on Cardano. I think it was achieved in 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, where it met the thresholds. So as soon as it hit 67%, and then it gets to the Epoch boundary, those votes are counted. The ICC obviously are counted as well. So every Epoch boundary, the chain reads where votes are, reads where the stake is, and then if it determines that threshold has been met, it happens. Unlike info actions, but for everything else, it happens. So yeah, that happened really quickly, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, tonight this Treasury withdrawal action will be enacted. So it was ratified the last epoch, which means that the chain confirmed thresholds were met. Now the boundary tonight means it's going to be enacted, which means the Treasury will be sending the money to Amaru team tonight at the boundary. So that's going to be great. We can watch that actually happening on chain to make sure that's all good, because it's the first time we've done this actually. So I say the Amaru team have done this.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Look, I think this is when we look back at the history of Cardano in a few years and we see the first withdrawals that come out, having something that brings more diversity. This is, for anyone not familiar, this is the Rust node from what I remember for Cardano. So to bring node diversity to Cardano, look, there is other nodes. I've seen Go and TypeScript and all sorts of nodes being developed, but this is the Amaru team that has put this one. So I think it's not a bad one to have going in there first for users too. So years will go in then, and I'm just thinking back through it. The funds go in. Actually, yes. So if they don't get approved, I don't know if we finish out on that point. If proposal doesn't hit that 67% threshold after the 6 epochs, is it dead, or does it be resubmitted, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something that we haven't had to face yet. Obviously, we're doing all this really for the first time. So we do need to collectively look at it as an ecosystem to say, what did we miss here on a particular proposal? It could be that it hit 65% and it just didn't squeak through the final thresholds. But is it something that we do actually want to fund? 65% support of something is pretty high, but obviously it needs to hit the 67. So if it fails, I guess from a constitutional perspective, that proposal has passed as a budget into action. So it doesn't need to go through that early stage again. It's there, it's on chain as a budget, it's been approved. They could try again, maybe clarifying things that DReps weren't sure about, maybe trying to gather support again. There is the other side of this, which I guess I'm not really sure how this will play out because we'll need to see it, but there might be fatigue, right? Voting on 39 proposals. There may be. I suspect there might not be because the community were quite clear about that's not going to be a problem. So I hope so. The other thing as well that's really important actually is a feature of the on-chain system. If you don't vote, if you're a DRep and you decide to vote on 10, not the full 39, so you've left 29 because you've gone, you know what, those 29 don't interest me. If you don't vote, they count as a no vote, an active no vote. So it's quite important, in my opinion at least, that to at least, even if it is a direct no, even if you don't want those 29 funded, that's fine, but make that explicit, put the no vote on chain, and then it won't be a question of lack of participation, right? That's what we want to probably avoid. So if we can say all 39 proposals had really great engagement and really good participation, even if it failed, there's a big learning in there. There's data that we can use to help either say, look, this proposal isn't going to cut it. We're not going to do it again. And it's up to the vendor as well. It's not Intersect to do this. The vendor will say, can we try again? Or they'll say, actually, look, Catalyst is funded or Builder DAO is funded. There are other funding opportunities that I can pursue. Maybe I'll start smaller. But ultimately, there's a ton of learnings that vendor will have had because they would have gone through the off-chain process with GovTool and Ecclesia. They would have gone through the budget info action. They would have gone through the Treasury Withdrawal process. So they would have a lot of insight there that they can hopefully use for the positive.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that I'd seen some of the bigger DReps to follow different discussions, and they wanted individual proposals or even grouped in smaller groups rather than one big one, because of that, there might be certain proposals that they had voted no for in the off-chain votes and wouldn't be in favor of funding. So there was the dilemma of, do you just vote no to everything if it was one big proposal? And there was a worry then that builders that you do want to see getting funded quickly, because things need to be built. We're in a fast-moving market. We want things to push forward fairly quickly. So I think that was one of the pluses. Obviously, you said there about voter fatigue. That was one of the negatives of having multiple different proposals. But this is the first time where we're all going to be learning from this. And as you say, there'll be a lot of learnings from what passes, what doesn't. Well, if things don't, that there'll be learnings all over that. I notice we're coming up on the 30 minutes now, but what is there any stuff that we haven't kind of covered here on this that will be good to put out there?
Yeah, I think maybe just to stress that the approving funding, today when the 39 are all there, it's not, money comes out and then it's gone. There's stage gates payments. I think we've spoken about that a lot as part of the milestones, but it's really important to stress that there is a accountability feedback loop here where projects have to demonstrate that they're delivering the code with demos. It could even be photos, right? If you're getting funding for an event, did you get the attendance numbers? Or if you didn't, but here's the evidence of where we are with everything. And the community needs to self-verify, right, that something has happened or not happened, or is it good quality or not good quality, as much as Intersect will do some of that as well. And then really it's about the reputational side of things. So vendors that are good about this will come back for hopefully future funding rounds if they need to or want to, and they would have had demonstrable success, right? Because they've had that before. Mm-hmm. So there is definitely a reputational social element to vendors doing good work for the ecosystem, which is what I kind of like. I like that a lot, actually. I like the reputational side of things. I think it's a really strong motivator to do good work. The other nice thing, Paul, just to mention, actually, just a little nugget, which we did communicate last week. One of our proposals that we're helping Tweeg, they have, we're working with them, NBX and the USDM and USDA teams to lock in the value of their proposal in USDM and USDA. So that's 11 million ADA, if it was approved, of course, but it'll be 11 million ADA that will be minted, brand new minting of USDM and USDA, split 50-50. That will also held with smart contract. So the smart contract can not just hold ADA as a token, it can also hold CNTs. In particular, though, the USDA and USDM. And that will all be visible. So that's cool.
Okay, yeah, I like that. That it is open to hold multiple and distribute multiple different assets. That's one other question just on the proposals had a dollar value on them, and I think most of them were proposed at a 50-cent ADA. Does that matter, or is it just the amount of ADA that is in there? Like Catalyst, I suppose you put in an ADA value, but some will value their proposal in terms of dollars, because still that's what a lot of builders and everything vendors are going to take. But does that matter what the current price is of ADA at the withdrawal time, or is it just the ADA that's assigned gets passed out?
Yeah, there's an important constitutional constraint's not the right word, but a principle, which is that only ADA budgets can only be denominated in ADA, and so therefore ADA, whatever the vendor has specified in ADA, will be what is put in the withdrawal action. Now, when that ADA comes in, obviously that could have been based in their proposal at 50 cents. And it was only 2 weeks ago we were close to that, or even not even 2 weeks ago, a week ago. So the market is extremely volatile, and there is a level of risk that vendors have to accept, and also a little bit of reward, potentially a bit of upside as well. But it's a difficult place to be as a business when you're trying to manage a program that might be 18 months long in delivery, and you're getting a one chance like this money, right? So the money that comes out of the treasury is that's it. You can't go back for more. Intersect can't make more available to you. You're going to have to do another budget info action, another treasury withdrawal if you need a top up. And so it's important, I think, to soften that concern, if you like. And it's similar to Catalyst. The other thing that you can do, of course, is lock it in USDM or USDA, which we're doing for Tweet, so that we don't have to worry about that. So
I fully understand it being locked in ADA, and look, we're trying to pull away as much as we can from the fiat world, and there's still that crossover when you're building. But Jack, thanks very much for your time. I learned a lot of how the process is, clarified lots of things in my head of how things work. And for me anyway, it's great to be at this stage to see that over the next few weeks, hopefully we're going to see different builders, whether that is building software, hosting events, bringing new people into the ecosystem. They're all going to start getting funded from the Treasury. And I look forward to seeing what other proposals can come in over the next few months and leading into next year. But any closing thoughts or anything? Again, the links you mentioned, I'll get you to send over any of them, and I can have them in the description for people to look at and to follow on the different sites that are there. Even if you just want to keep up to date on what's there, I think it's good to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I guess my closing thoughts really would be that it's super exciting. I mean, we could be funding potentially 275 million ADA worth of initiatives that are like going to bring amazing technology and features to the network, and a ton of other activations as well. So and we're doing this all with on-chain governance. We're doing this completely decentralized, which is just like really at this scale, it's unheard of in blockchain, and Cardano is pioneering here in so many ways. So it's just really exciting for whatever gets approved and whatever number we end up coming out with at the end. It doesn't matter, this process alone is just really pioneering and a first. So it's cool.
Yeah, and this is the first of many, I suppose, first of many big proposals. We're going to have these for many years to come, whatever form they will come in. These ones are going to define what the future ones look like, and vendors who are involved and not involved in this will learn a lot of what's expected or what they need to do to be able to meet certain thresholds. Jack, thanks very much for your time. I know it's a very busy time, and anyone with questions or anything like that on this or on Intersect in general, I think when this all calms down, we might sit down again and look at some of the other aspects of what Intersect do. We briefly covered, or you briefly covered it at the start, that there's a lot more verticals to Intersect rather than just being the, I suppose, the team handling the withdrawals and this aspect of the Treasury. So we'll look at that another day, but do let me know the questions down below on this and on the other aspects of Intersect, and we will set something up in another few weeks when it's a bit calmer.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Do give it a share. Let people know what's happening with Cardano on-chain governance, the current status that we're at. Give it a like. That all helps push the video out. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.